Welcome. My name is Nigel Richards, and this is the latest in a series of webinars on HotDocs automated document generation. I'm one of the senior product managers at HotDocs. I've been around for a while, and I'm going to take you through an introduction to HotDocs. The agenda today, we're going to talk very briefly about the benefits of document automation. Then we'll go on to talk a little bit about the company and who we are. We'll talk a little bit about how HotDocs works. And then I'll show you HotDocs in action from an end user point of view, and then move on to how this kind of technology can be used in just about any business, not just law firms, finance, any business that sells anything really. Then we'll take a look at how we create HotDocs templates. And before the half an hour is up, there should be time for us to take some questions, and I'll be reading those from the GoToMeeting webinar thing. So anyway, the benefits of document automation. It used to be, and many of our customers thought, that it was just about operational efficiency. How quickly can you produce documents, saving time and money? But more and more over the years, with the increase in regulation in finance, law, and many other industries, it's become very apparent that it's more about keeping control and the risk of poorly drafted documentation. So I'll begin at the top left here about document control, about the accuracy of the documentation. So HotDocs templates allow you to draft documents very, very quickly, but at the same time making sure the data within them is very, very accurately represented. It's not just about the data, it's also about the formatting, the styles that you use, the headers, the footers, and so on. We have computations that can take one piece of data and transform it and combine it with other pieces of data to make sure any corresponding bits of information in your documents are accurate in any one particular document. So all of this together means that you've got a great deal of compliance, whether it's Sarbanes-Oxley or Basel or whatever regulatory compliance rules you have to follow. There could even be internal policy regulations that are imposed by your own business. When you combine this with version control and the templates, it means you have a very great deal of confidence that your documents, the templates that are being used by your frontline staff, are highly compliant. And together, it's about risk mitigation, about limiting errors, about limiting mistakes that make your documents non-compliant. And we have a story about one of our customers a while back now who had a budget for protecting themselves against litigation, a litigation budget of 6 digits. And when they adopted HotDocs, not only was their document production much more efficient, but they found that the amount of money they were spending in court defending themselves dropped to effectively zero because the documents that went out to their customers were 100% reliable and accurate and protected them. And everybody knew what's going on. So a little bit more about HotDocs as a company. HotDocs has been the pioneer of document automation. The predecessor to HotDocs was a product called Caps Author, and it was so advanced at the time, coming out of a PhD project in the United States, that the people involved had to write their own word processor. We operate internationally across all 5 continents. There's 7,000 clients in more than 50 countries across lots of industry sectors. We actually don't know precisely how many end users we have because we have several publisher agreements, but we know that we have more than 1 million users worldwide taking full advantage of our document assembly software. In the legal market alone in North America, 60% of all US law firms use our product. 4 of the top banks in the world use our document automation. And insurance as well, especially in the United States, many of the top insurance companies use us in claims or policies. So how does HotDocs work? The concept behind HotDocs is that we provide our customers with the tools to take their Word or PDF-based documentation and transform it into HotDocs templates. They do this by marking up the business rules within their content, within their Word document or their PDF, that governs which clauses go in, what data goes where, and what format it should be in. Not only does the template define how the document should be created, it also defines how the data is presented, the questions are presented to the users. The templates might be hosted in the cloud, or they might be on a desktop or an on-premise server. And users interact with that content by filling in what we call an interview. An interview, as you'll see in a few moments, is a guided series of questions and answers that the users follow the questions, responding to them, and the interview reacts intelligently, guiding the user through the series of questions until enough has been answered for HotDocs to merge that data with the business rules to produce the output documentation, each one 100% accurate and highly tailored for each recipient. So let's take a look now at how this looks to an end user. Now, HotDocs is available as an application in the cloud or on-premise or even just on the desktop. This particular application, proving very popular over the last year, especially in Europe, is what we call Workspace. It allows users in an enterprise to create documentation. It could be used in a legal firm, or it could be used in any other firm who has a requirement for producing documentation. So in this particular scenario, let's imagine I'm a salesperson and I work for a company that sells software and services and payroll systems for human resources. Let's imagine I'm talking to a customer and it's now time for us to create a contract. I can select a template from a content management system. In this particular case, we've decided to organize the templates into a hierarchy of continents and countries, but you can choose the way you structure your content. Down here, I have what's called a standard customer contract. I click Create. I'm going to create a company name here, and then a reference number, just for my own benefit, so I can find the document later. When I click Go to Interview, we can now see that questionnaire, that interview that I described earlier on. You'll notice it's divided into two sections. On the left, we have an interview outline that gives us a high-level view of the structure of the interview. On the right-hand side are a series of intuitive questions that have been defined by the policy experts that created the content in the first place. So my name's Nigel Richards, and remember, I'm a salesperson. I don't really need to know the legal wording underneath the template. I can simply follow the questions as a series until I've completed. Which business board is this contract being created for? I'll select the HR, products and services. Now, so that we're not spending your time watching me fill in lots of fields, we've connected this template to an external data source so that I can pre-populate the interview very quickly. In the real world, this would be populated by a customer relationship management platform where you keep your customer data. And there you see, the interview has expanded. Let's take a closer look. Here, we have a dialogue which asks me about details of previous agreements to be terminated by this new agreement. Notice that there's not just one, there's one, two, and I can add another one. HotDocs can deal with repeated data. We're going to terminate that immediately. Notice also that as we change the type of company we're working with, HotDocs changes the questions that need to be answered. And here we're changing the entity type for the party that we're contracting with. And you'll see that as we change, the questions that are required to be answered changes with us. But let's take a look at this dialogue. Here, the salesperson is being asked which products and services are to be included. I can click P11D software, training and consultancy, and depending which products I enter, the interview changes accordingly. And you can see how this means that the salesperson can be guided accurately through the series of questions, only being asked to respond to those questions which need answering. The interview outline gives us an indication of which questions remain left unanswered by the white box here. I can enter the name of the entity, who's to be paid. When I'm finished, and of course I can save these details and come back for a later session if I don't have all the details to hand, but when I'm finished, I click the Finish button. HotDocs combines the data with the business rules and the underlying template and allows me to download the document. And here we see this is an 11,000 word document, every paragraph, every detail correctly formatted. Only the relevant clauses have been brought into the document. Notice the level of detail, the indentation, the outline numbering. This could easily have been, had I added other products, a much longer document, drastically improving the efficiency with which we can produce documentation. We even down here have the direct debit mandate at the end here for banking purposes. HotDocs has been popular in banks partly because we can even deal with multi-level signature blocks. Anyway, take back now to the presentation. So that's how you've seen HotDocs being used as it might be by a salesperson, but it could be a lawyer. It could be somebody working in a bank producing documentation for a customer. So documentation affects all businesses. Any business that sells anything of any complexity, without services or products, necessarily has a requirement for documentation to go with it. Once you've found a prospect, there's often documentation, perhaps project documentation, outlines to go with the pre-sales. Once you onboard a client, whether that's a client engagement letter in law or the credit and lending documentation in finance and lending, or whether it's a contract that might be in any other service like the one we produce, very important documentation there. Going on from that, throughout the lifespan of your relationship as a company with your customer, there's inevitably lots of correspondence that goes with it, contract renewals and so on. And customer management in general requires communication with your customer. So traditionally, there are documentation teams. It might be in a small company, it might be the same person, there might just be one. And these documentation teams, this documentation person, is in communication with frontline staff. And the dotted lines here represent emails and telephone calls, very ad hoc and prone to mistakes and errors creeping in. There's correspondence with third parties, for instance, in the case of a mortgage, where you're dealing with the attorney or the solicitor acting on behalf of the customer buying the property. Many times you have a customer data in a CRM, a customer relationship management platform. The documentation teams are cutting and pasting or copying data from one place to the other. You might have document management, very common, SharePoint, iManage, and so on, and then manually saving the documents into those systems. It's error-prone. Error-prone drafting in a word process. Lots of emails, hard to track things. There's repeated data entry into multiple systems. And very importantly, there's an inconsistency between your customer data, the data about your customers, and actually the documents that they're being given, because there's no guarantee that what people are putting in documents is actually the same data. Effectively, there's delays and bottlenecks and risk all over the place. So when you introduce HotDocs, commonly the first place it goes is directly for those documentation teams. Sometimes it's just a desktop version of HotDocs. Very soon, or even from the beginning, it makes sense to integrate HotDocs with your customer data so you don't have to retype. And integrate HotDocs with your document management system. But really, where our companies get most benefit is when they let their frontline staff, those people who need the documentation ready for their customers in the first place, get direct access to HotDocs. And even the third-party correspondence. And remember, there's desktop HotDocs, on-premise client server, and cloud HotDocs solutions to help your business get the solution you need. Now this is all very good, because there's no errors in the sophisticated tailored documentation. There's fewer internal emails, no lost or misplaced documents, zero weight on-demand documentation for your customers. And very importantly, there's 100% consistency between the data in your CRM and the documentation that goes out to your customers. So that's great. But really, this only works if you have confidence that you can create the content, that you can produce the content your customers need. And that brings me on to the next part of my demonstration. I'm going to start with a Word document. It's simply a Word document, nothing more, nothing less. There's nothing special about this. We've chosen an employment agreement because an employment agreement is a type of document which we've all seen before. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in finance or law, but I have seen an employment agreement before. The first thing I need to do is turn this into a HotDocs template. When a template author, a policy expert within an organization, has HotDocs Developer installed, they can see the HotDocs toolbar in any Word document. They simply need to click the Create Template button here, and HotDocs will take a copy of the underlying document and turn it into a HotDocs template. You can see here I've got two documents open. The original one, which I can now close, and the HotDocs template. I know it's a HotDocs template because in the foreground here, under the HotDocs menu, I've got all the tools I need to turn this template into a HotDocs template. Let's take James Smith's name. James Smith is the name of an individual employee who we onboarded at some time in the past. Using the HotDocs toolbar, we can replace every instance of James Smith's name with a field. We can choose the name. We can choose the variable name that we provide. And because it's somebody's name, we can put an uppercase letter. We can force the formatting that HotDocs will use every time this field is populated with a capital letter. There we go. Here's a date. This is the agreement date. This time it's not a text field, but a date field. Notice how the format is detected from the back end. HotDocs is fantastic at formatting dates, numbers, and any other data that you need to represent in your document. HotDocs can even work in other languages. Indeed, it's one of the reasons why we've been so successful in many markets where our competitors can't meet. This is going to be the agreement date. Just replace once. This is the start date. Notice how the date format is different. HotDocs can deal with that. Here we have the annual salary. It's a number. Notice how the format has been detected correctly. We can change the format, of course. 2 decimal places, a comma between thousands and the hundreds. And of course, if this was in another country, there'd be a dot here and a comma here. This is going to get more interesting now. Here's the monthly salary. Notice how the monthly salary is expressed in words, and it has a monetary unit associated with it. We don't want the user to mentally calculate. HotDocs has the concept of a computation. Computations can compute anything you like: text, numbers, dates. In this case, we just simply take the annual salary, drag it into the scripting area, and divide by 12. But while we're here, let's just take a closer look at some of the other things that we can do. HotDocs can calculate the day of the week on a certain date, so you can prevent important dates falling on a weekend. We can calculate compound interest. We can calculate anything you need in most documents. The format has been detected. You can see here verbose and in a monetary unit, and of course we can do that in lots of others. If the format you're looking for isn't here, you can type one in and create one. So far we've been creating fields, albeit very clever fields. But what happens if you have a conditional paragraph that's only to be inserted under certain circumstances? In other words, we want to change the structure of the document. We can create an if field. This one is about paid holiday. Not all employees apparently are entitled to paid holiday. There we go. Easy as that. Here we have the number of days. Here we have the number of days holiday expressed in words. We can reuse the same field in multiple places. We don't have to create a new variable. HotDocs this time knows it's to be expressed in words. I'm going to create one more field. It's the internal contact. The internal contact is going to be a multiple choice. We could, of course, pull from a database. I could test the field. There's radio buttons. Notice how HotDocs is building the UI as we create fields. I could change the way those fields look. A drop-down list. I click OK and I replace once. So I'm almost done. If I want, I can test assemble the whole document. You can see simply by putting fields in the document and the body of a Word document to turn it into a HotDocs template, we already have the start of a questionnaire. Notice if I click the paid holiday question, the number of days crops up. HotDocs doesn't need to be told. HotDocs understands the dependencies, so we already have a UI. One more thing. I'm going to make this available for HotDocs Server. And I'm also going to create my own dialogue, just to show you that if I don't like the default questionnaire, I can create my own. That's the name of my dialogue. I can drag and drop the employee name, the number of days, the paid holiday questions, the start date, the agreement date, the internal contact question, the annual salary. I can change the layout. I might want the paid holiday question beside the number of days, and I can test at any moment. There, I've changed the layout. One more test assemble. There. So now I'm pleased with that. I'm happy that that's exactly what I need. Now, how do I get that to my customers and to my end users? I can upload this from the HotDocs development tool. Now, I have lots of different applications I could upload to. Most of our customers might just have one or two. But I'm going to upload to our content repository called the Template Hub, labeled January here. The template and its dependencies are being packaged up into a little file. I click Upload, and here we are on the web. I can set a forward publishing date so that we can make this template become active in the future. However, I'm just going to update as it is. The template has now been uploaded. The next thing I do is I can choose which folder it should be made available to. Our content repository allows us to organize templates. So I'm going to select the UK, and I'm going to add the template we've just created here, the new template 10, and add it to that group. Now watch what happens. When I go back to this application, which we saw a few moments ago earlier in this presentation, and now I click Create Contract, and I select Europe, and I select UK, here is the contract we uploaded, the very one that we started with a Word document a little while ago. There we go. So this is the very same template created from a Word document that we only started automating not more than, I think, 12 minutes ago. And already we're using it in a cloud environment and have produced an output document. My name, the start date, the salary. There's £1,000 and no pence per month coming through as a monthly salary from beginning to end in 15 minutes. So that was creating HotDocs templates. We've seen HotDocs templates being created, uploaded into a server environment. It could have been a cloud environment. We've seen how those templates can be used and the quality of documentation that can be produced. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. Thank you. Bye.